John is Professor at the University of Manchester. His post is also jointly funded by the Greater Manchester West Mental Health NHS Foundation Trust, so he's clearly got a very long business card. He's also the co-editor of Dementia, the International Journal of Social Research and Practice, and he's going to be talking, as I say, about communities and the social environment.
Oh, thanks very much. Thank you. Can everybody hear me okay? I'm shouting a little bit, not very much. Okay, I'll pretend to be a singer and talk into this. Well, thank you very much for the invite and the opportunity to be here and talk to you for around about a quarter of an hour. Then you're followed by Sabine, so it's very much a double act. I think what I'd like to share with you is almost the steps that led us to this point. You may or may not be aware, but the Prime Minister, through his Dementia Initiative, had a big pot of money to fund research in dementia. It was pushed together through, in our country, the ESRC and the NIHR. It was the first time, really, that those two research councils have come together to fund research in dementia. It was launched, or was part of the Prime Minister's Dementia Initiative, part of his challenge, and basically myself and a number of people in this room, including Andrew and many more, Richard and many other people here, were actually part of a bidding team which actually was successful in getting money from that scheme. It's going to be a 5-year programme grant. It started on the 1st of May, but it probably starts really on the 1st of June. And basically it's looking at the areas of neighbourhoods and dementia. What I'd like to do in my 10 minutes or so is just to demonstrate how we really got there, because it wasn't quite clear. This is part of there was 10 partner organisations, that's there. A lot of partners and a lot of supporting organisations. We had people with dementia as co-applicants and also as partners, and it was very clear to us from the very beginning that what we wanted to do is have people with dementia who came together as people with dementia, such as the Scottish Dementia Working Group, such as the AIDS Club in North Wales, such as the Educate Group in Scotland, to really take the ownership of the user involvement part of this piece of work. So basically, this is about how we got to really that 5-year programme grant, which has kind of started yesterday, for want of a better word. And there has been change in our lifetime. That is my own change in my lifetime about dementia. When I started to be a community mental health nurse in 1986, I trained as a mental health nurse here in this big asylum in Essex. It was a 2,000-bedded asylum. That's the first time I ever met somebody with dementia, and that was back in February 1983. And this is a gentleman called Stanley, and this is a day out in Southend-on-Sea. It was the annual day out for the asylum, basically for the dementia wards. So as a student mental health nurse in those days, of course, you actually went onto those areas and you took people out once a year. When I was there, give or take, it would be about 31 years ago this month, we went on a beach trip to Southend-on-Sea. And that was the only outdoor space this person ever experienced in a whole year. Now it was interesting again, saying, well, gosh, things have changed so much, haven't they? Well, that report this morning basically said it probably hasn't changed that much, has it? It's about opportunities for people with dementia to actually interact in the outside world. This isn't a very scientific slide. It's something I put together on the train. And I was just really planning in my head over the last 20 or 30 years of working in this field, really what has happened? Where have we come from? When you look at all the different therapies, and these are lots of therapies over the years. Remember Bob Woods' book with Una Holden back in 1982 about reality orientation, really shifted the axis of dementia care. It said you can do something. And then you work your way through over the years, Tom Capewood's work, Dawn Brooker's work. I'd like to say we did a little bit of something with relationship-centered care with Mike Nolan, myself and others. And then we have the agenda on citizenship. And Ruth Bartlett's work with Deborah Connor and other people in this room really contributing towards, well, actually it's not enough to have a philosophy of care, we need social action. And that citizenship agenda is incredibly important, because all the other therapies, if I can stand here as a mental health nurse, are things that are done to people. It's very rarely done with them. And I think what we have as an enormous sea change is that we're actually now working alongside people with dementia as fully fledged, informed citizens in their own right. Now, those words were placed basically in the Prime Minister's challenge. It was about a citizenship agenda. It was the first time it was really being acknowledged on a policy platform. Going back to those asylum days of the early 1980s to today, give or take, you've actually got politicians talking about dementia. And I think that political will for change is incredibly important. Dementia-friendly communities obviously was one of 3 areas that David Cameron mentioned. I know most of you will know this in this room, but it's incredibly important again just to highlight this. Dementia-friendly communities is on the lips of politicians. If it's on the lips of politicians, it's on the lips of commissioners of services. And therefore it becomes part of an outcome-orientated framework where measurements are made and change happens. But we've got dementia-friendly communities right there. If you looked at the Prime Minister's challenge, there's those areas, really, that he talks about. It's about having dementia-friendly communities across the country, and probably the awareness-raising campaign, things to do with Dementia Friends. I haven't got my badge on, but it's that sort of initiative around changing the culture and the public perception of dementia, and putting dementia as a public health need and a public education need, more than a therapeutic interaction. And that is an enormous sea change in our lifetime. The Prime Minister's challenge basically acknowledges that it will take time, and as quite rightly say, basically the Alzheimer's Society and the Dementia Action Alliance have been put in charge, inverted commas, of rubber stamping the dementia-friendly initiative, certainly within England. And I think those things again become important as we move forward about these macro policies and then the individual constructions of what a neighbourhood is. I'm going to talk from the big to the small here. This is taking it small to Salford, where I spent quite a bit of my time. And basically we did some work with people with dementia, probably the last 6 or 7 years, at the Humphrey Booth Resource Centre. Hazel Blears, our politician, is really quite involved in a lot of the activities that go on in that centre. But we've actually worked alongside Caroline and others to actually work alongside people with dementia and their families to say, what do you actually want? And it's very simple. Some things are very simple. I've just highlighted in red here, to remain connected to our everyday lives, communities and the places where we live. So please do things for me and us that allow us to do that. Some of our research work that I would like to think built onto the neighbourhood study was about empowering people with dementia and other conditions too, like stroke or breast cancer, to actually take charge of their own constructions of need and show us and model for us what diagrammatically they understand by their lived experience. It's a very hands-on technique. So basically this is somebody who's lived with Parkinson's disease for 15 years. That was his wife, Catherine. And we're asking our questions like who, what and where is centre stage in your life. And you have a series of diagrams over time that change. On this one, John's memory loss associated with his Parkinson's disease moved from the outside of the stage right to dominate the middle. It's such a visual clue that he was actually having such difficulties with his memory. But they also, as part of this, do a where. Where is centre stage? And it goes back to the presentations from earlier, because this is somebody with dementia, or Parkinson's dementia, and their wife telling us what is important in their lives. So where, with the triangles, is the risk points. Bathroom, bedroom, garage. Could be a gendered space, a garage. Most men trundle off to the garage for a bit of space and time to themselves. So very much for John, he liked spending time in the garage, but basically it was a very risky area in the house. His wife didn't like him doing it. Lots of plugs, lots of sockets, lots of things to get your hands into. And for basically this presentation too, going out to the shops was their lifeline. But it was very much controlled by his wife. But it was very much an important part of the where do you go. This is Catherine, his wife, saying, go to lunch, he, John, comes to life, then he goes off. And they're talking about going to and out into a cafe. This is a diagram written by Mo Quinn, explaining basically her life with young onset Alzheimer's disease. Mo's no longer with us. But she drew this diagram of her life living with Alzheimer's disease. And all I want to highlight to you from this, she drew it as a card because her 4 sisters, unfortunately, all died with the onset of Alzheimer's disease. But what she said was basically this: still going on holidays, please. So strategies to support my everyday life, to have an everyday life, was incredibly important. Richard and I supervised a student called Charlie. When we first met Char, she was working in Northampton, and she's been our student since about 2009. And this was the PhD that we put together with Char to have a look at areas of the neighbourhood and a longitudinal mapping study. And through that mapping study, I won't go through it all, but basically this is about people with dementia and families plotting their neighbourhoods. Where do they access and where do they go? And drawing it. Very creative. It's been a big bit of paper and just mapping it out. So here, you've got somebody with dementia, Mary and Steve, lived together in their bungalow for 53 years. Their neighbourhood is a walkable distance. It's about neighbours and friends. And they're telling us, or the person with dementia is telling us in this diagram, where their neighbourhood is. 11 years, walkable distance still seems important to this couple. This is another couple, basically showing us where in their neighbourhood is important to them as people with dementia. Char's early work is actually, she's in her write-up here now. She's given her permission for us to share these slides with you. And basically it goes back to some of the work that we heard this morning from Anne and Lynn and others. But it's about what is the meaning of a neighbourhood for somebody living with dementia. Well, it's about a social network, family, friends and neighbours, walkable distance, commutable distance, a whole village or a virtual community, areas of landmark. It's about biographical connectivity to the place in which you live. So very simple things, daily activities, going shopping, going for a walk with your family, visiting places, and so on. Family and safety, familiarity and safety are important, and also channels or vehicles, such as the use of assistive technology. And we heard Brian talk about that this morning as well. This holds great promise, actually built from a construction of need from somebody with dementia and their family, telling us what their life is like and what we understand by the meaning of the neighbourhood. Richard and I and others did a review of the literature, and some of Lynn's work and others was a part of that, but we didn't find too many studies when we published this in Reviews in Clinical Gerontology, looking at neighbourhoods and dementia. I think we found in memory around about 18 studies. And they were grouped into those 3 areas: about outdoor spaces, sort of life outside the front door. There was research about the built environment, and there was research about everyday technologies from 18 studies across the world. Our conclusions were that no research set out to inquire how people with dementia define their neighbourhood. There was some really, like we heard from Lynn this morning, some really innovative research methods, such as the walking interview. And we really needed to develop a neighbourhood model of dementia for the future. And that really led us to the thinking behind the Neighbourhoods and Dementia study, which started really on the 1st of May, yes, but certainly on the 1st of June. I'm not standing here before you with some sort of great knowledge and insight into sociology and the meaning of social geography. But in trying to get this together, we worked very closely with Andrew and others to try and understand a neighbourhood as it would be understood by a research council funding panel. Now that is a totally different ballgame. So sat in a room in London with about 15 people around a table trying to sell them a 5-year research programme about neighbourhoods and dementia, and why really we want people with dementia to take the charge of part of this research programme is really challenging. But we came by this sort of aid, and almost we did it the night before the panel interview, and we defined neighbourhood as people, spaces, places, and the neighbourhood basically expanding and contracting as to how these things are revolve around. Also very influenced by Tim Blackman's work, which probably stands resonance by the early findings of Char's study. I won't go through all this with you. I'm happy to take any questions later or just talk about it. This is the research program. The bottom one here, the middle one, we're going to be developing a core outcome set that is led by people with dementia about what is meaningful in their lives, rather than some of the outcome measures which are set by us from quite some time ago. And also going to be looking at the dementia-friendly neighbourhood. Richard is leading that programme of work. That will also happen within the Centre for Dementia Research in Keady in Sweden, as well as other areas of the UK. And we have basically 3 what would be interventions, for want of a better word. We're actually going to be looking at acute care and the neighbourhood spaces and hospitals for people with dementia. Couples living with dementia, and something that I've been involved with for about 6 years now, about understanding the experience of deaf people, people who actually sign but have the first experience of dementia. A project funded by the Alzheimer's Society, which will now go forward to actually develop the very first intervention for people living with, who are deaf and living with dementia. As part of that, as part of our work, we're actually, we want people with dementia not just to be participants, but to be co-researchers alongside us. So we have to develop and design for the very first time actually an education program to enable people with dementia to learn about doing research methods. So from very early awareness right through to actually partaking and doing of the research to the analysis of the research. So we're actually going to be designing those materials to work alongside the user groups to start to pilot it so that we buddy up with people and they basically have the skills and the support to enable them to research their own environment. And that in a nutshell, is what we want to do. Start in the very hub with people with dementia, move out towards the neighbourhoods, into society, and then just see what happens. And allowing people with dementia to take charge of their own decision-making is incredibly important to us in this programme of work. In conclusion, for us, a dementia-friendly neighbourhood will only work if people with dementia venture outside the front door. There is so much work and so much literature and so much time where people with dementia's lives get almost reduced and diluted to their front room or their bedroom. And having the confidence to step outside the door is incredibly important, and also the family enabling that to happen is incredibly important. People with dementia need opportunities to take part in this world of ours. So many times we close them down. Citizenship is crucial, and we need participatory spaces. I just put that up there because I don't quite know what it means, but we need to share a knowledge, just like we've done today. This is a very participatory space, which is populated with different ideas and different ways of thinking, and it's incredibly important. And I just want to leave it with a picture of Anne Johnson, who was a lecturer in ophthalmic nursing in 2006. She acquired Alzheimer's disease, now lives in a care home. We worked together in the School of Nursing, and she is now basically was awarded an honorary doctorate for her work in dementia, and also an OBE for her services to dementia. But her journey, she lives in a care home. We've written with her. She's got an MMSE score of 13, but I'll tell you one thing, she's more articulate than I will ever be talking about dementia. So those spaces need to be articulated and said by people living with the condition. It becomes incredibly important. Just a couple of websites. Thank you very much.
Okay, the second of our 2 speakers in this evidence briefing session is Sabine Henry. Sabine for 6 years was the Vice Chair of Alzheimer's Europe, and she is currently the Chair of the National Alzheimer's Society in French-speaking Belgium.
It's working? Oh, so I can move. Oh. Thank you very much for inviting me here, and I'm very honored to be here and to be heard of all these experts. So, dementia-friendly cities in Belgium, I found it. It's not a romantic idea, but a very realistic initiative which needs not so much money, but goodwill and a strong motivation from all people involved in it. So, we will see a summary. I will go on. So it's something communities and social environment. It's a very hard word for me, environment. In French, it's environnement. you know, it's difficult to change this. The state of the art. We all know that there actually no cure for Alzheimer's disease, so we have to find other things. And I think the space surrounding people with dementia and their carers is a social space which can give a lot of solutions. So we decide to use the social environment of the person with dementia as the first support in achieving a certain quality of life. Quality of life is each time a very individual subject. We promote a community in which people with dementia as well as their carer feel supported, respected, heard, confident, included. In some summary, they can be and they must be actors of their life. So, in the dementia-friendly community who's involved, the person with dementia, external actors, all the family, no. And it's very important to come from the ideas to action. I love the actions, and the aim is living normally with Alzheimer's. So it's a Netherlands, it's a dementia-friendly city. And a dementia-friendly city can make a network of cities that hold and develop activities related to Alzheimer's disease. Main objectives: to enable people with dementia to keep on living where they want to and as an actor, not as a victim. I think it's the main sense of this action, to encourage their inclusion within their communities, to acknowledge in the positive contribution they can make to their environment. So they are active citizens, to improve the quality of life of people with dementia and their carers. And we use the example, the model of Youth Age-Friendly City, which was said in the morning. To increase awareness and understanding of the disease in communities through information. Information is a magic word, information, but it must be adapted, this information, to ensure that all stakeholders directly or indirectly concerned by dementia benefit from the initiative. So it must be a win-win situation. Is this clear? Yes. Thank you. How do you become a dementia-friendly city? Signing the Charter of the League Alzheimer. We wrote this charter, and it's very clear. It's a little bit, there are several rights and obligations, but it's a real charter. Each signatory city hereby commits itself to encourage the inclusion of people with dementia and their relatives in their community. It may be each time another way to do this, but they have to sign this engagement. To-do list for each actor of the community, a clear set of obligations to respect. Each actor, that may be the medical carers, it may be the association of shops, and so on. Partnership between the local council and the league. The timetable of the project is very important, even when we cannot do all things in the first year, but we have to do the first step in the first year. Establishment of a point of contact. It's a proxy DEM agent. I will come to this back after. Creation of a network of professionals, including volunteers, very important, because it's not very expensive. Doctors, pension funds, insurance, legal aid, and financial state aid. Is this clear? Yes? Thank you for your feedback. I make a real big effort to do this. We need to do this because each person has to know what he has to do. The city council in Belgium, there are city councils, and it has to identify the people with dementia. We need real numbers, and we don't have this. Gather all the actors concerned or interested in the initiative to find out what is lacking for the city to effectively handle dementia. Hire quality staff, make available suitable location for the activities. Sometimes it's the natural contribution of some people to find a place where we can propose activities. The citizens, they are involved also, use the existing activities as a starting point. I think about elderly people clubs and artistic meetings and so on. Establish a relationship of trust with the council and the league. Include all shops, business and services. It's a progressive process. Encourage the civil society to establish strategies that help people with dementia to utilize their services, recognize and thank their involvement. It's very important when we are a partner to do. I'm really late. To thank their involvement. If we wish to have a lot of people with us to build a dementia-friendly city, we have to let them free to come with us, and when they come, we have to say thank you. The family, find solution with the carers, ask and use their know-how. They are the expertise they have the expertise. The volunteers, you can read them. Alors, the Proxidem, a central actor. The Proxidem is a council employee who has been trained by the league, it's free of charge, provide useful and specific information on dementia and Alzheimer's disease, act as a point of contact for people with dementia and their caregivers, as well as any person interested in dementia. It's not on a very high level. When you come to the administration of a city, sometimes you have to know where you can get a new passport or identity card. And in the case of Alzheimer's, you have often a new passport identity card. So it's interesting to learn to the administration to when people come often, they have to be served and we have to smile to them. Does not have a medical background, but has some experience with disabled people. He is able to listen to people and to provide them practical help. The Proxidem has a professional profile with the human side. The human side is the most important thing. Development of the project. Each actor has a well-defined role to play. The charter and a methodological structure are the starting point. However, the development of a dementia-friendly city depends very much on several factors, including not only the financial side, geographical conditions, urban or rural, inside, outside, political incentives of the local council election make change all things because it's a political attitude and choices. Policy change, focus on yes and sport, for instance. It's more interesting to be young than to be old. But the important element of the motivation of the person involved the human factor. 2 minutes? Oh, it's a pity. The activities. Some examples in Belgium, Via Dem. Via Dem, it's a very interesting name. Via, it's a way, and Dem, it's dementia. But Via Dem, it's Ville amie démence. There's a double sense of the name. You can find Alzheimer cafes. We have about 45 Alzheimer cafes in the French-speaking part of Belgium. The Circle of K training sessions for carers, home assistance, auxiliaire de vie. It's by volunteers. Artistic animation, activities with other generation, retirement home and kindergarten, neighborhood parties, very famous. Alzheimer tandem cycling tours, 2 men on the same cycle. Presentation Alzheimer comics at school, and the fighter group, which is a group for young patients with dementia. On the left you can see an Alzheimer cafe. The yellow image is the book for Circle of Care. On the right it's the artistic, the painting book, and you can see on the left elderly people in a kindergarten. And then at the Alzheimer cafes we are dancing, we are smiling, sometimes it's very hot ambience, and yes, you can see other images of our activities in the Alzheimer dementia-friendly cities. I think I have to finish. So, you can read this on the written form of my presentation. And conclusion, an artist will not become a painter without a proper set of brushes and colors. It's natural. The same way, an interested citizen cannot become an effective support without the appropriate tools. So far, the League Alzheimer has achieved its object to fight loneliness, indifference, ignorance, and fear by combining a clear framework with a practical application and a strong motivation and the desire to contribute to the community. There is a will, there is a way. Dementia-friendly cities, via them, I invite you to try it. Thanks you for attention. And there are the members of the actual riot. Thank you very much.